Welcome back, members of the channel, as well as welcome on in, potential scout initiates. This is Spruce and Studs, and I hope that you find your stay to be very pleasing as well as equally informative. Just to let you all know what to expect, we will be inspecting each and every single part of this night separately, but in excruciating detail. Then we will be migrating on figuring out how this action figure actions. Next, we will be assembling this glorious piece of metal and plastic. And finally, we will be comparing the size of this knight with some choice action figures. However, before I start off with the unboxing, to my new and inquisitive viewers of the channel, I would hit that subscribe button, not only because the Emperor wills it, because yours truly over here arguably has the largest Warhammer 40K as well as Horus Heresy action figure reviews in his catalog. So if there's an action figure that you are interested in buying, I probably have reviewed it already, so just check out my channel. And with that shameless promotion, let's finally get to the unboxing. I have to give a massive shout out to JoyToy because they got this massive piece of equipment from China all the way to the US intact and in one piece and way ahead of release schedule for those of us who reside in the United States and ordered from a third-party vendor. So thank you those of you who work at JoyToy from the bottom of my heart, and also for making this review happen sooner than later. However, the information that is pertinent to you is that JoyToy offers free and tariffless shipping. If you are interested in procuring any kind of Warhammer 40K or Horus Heresy action figure, just click in the link in the description below, or you will be brought to their storefront. And there you will find a website that is extremely easy to navigate. And not only do they have the best user interface, they have fantastic customer service and will do the best of their ability to make any wrong things right if there are any issues with your order. And finally, before you check out, do not forget to use the code SNS to receive a tremendous 12% off on your order. And now, my fellow and newly subscribed members of the chapter, it is time to dive into the in-depth review. This head area is nicely detailed in my opinion, with each section of it partitioned off with this golden band that also has been tastefully airbrushed. Then you also find the same airbrushing that is deliciously located at the junction areas where the gold band meets the rest of the armor. The visor then lifts to reveal two beady translucent red lenses that will light up, in which I will show you later on in the video how this is possible. This is the detail of the back of the head, and as you can see, there really isn't that much to see because this area is actually obscured. This top carapace is easily the heaviest part of the knight, weighing in at a hefty 5 pounds and 7 ounces. Other specs include the length from pauldron to pauldron, which is a rather lengthy 17 inches. The carapace is dominated by a vast expanse of blue, with some depth that was given to it by shading that is found in between the armor panels. I wish that these rivets were gunmetal because they look a little bit more realistic, but at least I am happy that JoyToy decided to impart some flavor to these rivets by highlighting them. These gunmetal rails and rungs, as well as these various gold bits and pipes, help break up the monotony of the blue areas. I am really enjoying the small details like this perfectly done House Terryn crest in front and the vents that are on the back, but I do wish that these vents were colored just a little bit darker. The power plant and smokestacks are exactly what I want because the exhaust area at the top exhibits a bit of soot, while the center portion remains a rather clean gold. If you lift this area up, you reveal the cockpit. The command center of the knight is highly detailed, as you can see this very cushy looking pilot seat, complete with instrument panels that are on the armrests. In front of the pilot is a gorgeous blue screen with some gauges. You get the feeling that JoyToy definitely did pull out all the stops in this cockpit area. Moving on, you have the House Terryn heraldic shield
with some very large purity seals. Then opposite to the shield is a Questoris heavy stubber that has some savory paint effects that has been done to it. Flipping around the back, you can clearly see that there is a power plant, and this is where all the action happens. I can't even describe to you how fantastic all this machinery looks with all the hoses and pipes. Finally, the pauldrons look quite artistic, with both the back panels boasting the sumptuous flavor of the eagle, while the left front has a massive horse head, and the other one has a large-sized chessboard in which you can play Titan-sized chess. And here is a more detailed view of all the guts and internals of the right side of the knight, and then more detailed view of the left side of the knight. Each and every single knight has a number associated to it, and I apparently have number 900 of 1,000. That's not a chain sword. This is a chain sword. This mower of massive weeds spans roughly from 14 inches from end to chain tip. The power plant end of this weapon is clearly a gunmetal color, but what I like about this area the most is all of the airbrush shading that is located around these rivets, as well as these metal junction points. Without this touch, this area definitely would be plain as a barren desert. These golden tanks, which likely fuel the Reaper, breaks up the monotony of the gunmetal quite nicely. Then at the business end, the color transitions to a blue with some really nice gold outlining that really accents the edges of the chainsword. Just like the back end, there's a ton of airbrushing right here. Then the teeth of the chainsword is made of a soft plastic. There is also some weathering on the saber teeth of this chainsword, although I wish that the weathering was just a little bit more prominent. Let's start with an appetizing spec in that this massive cannon is around 16.5 inches from the end of the gun to the gun barrel. Moving on to the aesthetics, I really enjoy the color balance on this massive cannon. The gunmetal that is interspersed with the gold and blue really makes this gun very pleasing to look at. Just like the Reaper chainsword, there is a ton of airbrushing that is found all over the gun, and without this very simple addition, I guarantee you that this cannon would not look this good. What really helps this blue area jump out just a little bit more is this subtle edge highlighting too. I also really like the color transition of the battle cannon from this dark gunmetal at the tip, then transitioning to a lighter silver right here, and then migrating back to a dark gunmetal again. I am a big fan of this gold outlining around the blue shield portion that also has shading around the rivets, which makes this area pop just a little bit more too. Alright, let's talk about the legs of this massive beast. I can tell you that the legs are definitely sturdy because they weigh in around 4 pounds 2 ounces. It stands at roughly 1 foot tall and then 1 foot wide from toe to toe. This ring up top is where the body connects and is made of metal. In fact, there are many components, especially the ones that operate the joint areas, are made of metal, except that you can't see them due to this plastic casing that is on the outside. Anyways, you find the same shading that you see in the rest of the body, especially in these joint areas right here. Aside from that, the legs are decorated beautifully with this chessboard patterning on the left knee, and then some diamonds that are located on the right knee. However, the knight really gets into its artistic side because it expresses itself on the shin covers. There's clearly a massive aquila on the inside portion, and this red color contrasts with the blue that is on the outside portion, which sports a horse head reminiscent of a knight chess piece. There is a tabard, or kind of a standard like piece of thick plastic, that is hanging down from some equally thick plastic chains that are located right here. The various other designs and icons below the crest really bring out the extra flavor in this area. Now, the back of the legs is clearly where the business end of the knight is located, much like the top of the body. There are many hoses and pistons that help the knight physically operate, and this area is definitely dominated by gunmetal, gold, and other various luscious metallic colors. And here you can suck in more of the glorious details that are on this awesome and highly decorated knight. Now let's move on to the pilot. And straight off the bat, I have not seen this much detail since a V1 action figure, which is a very welcome sight to see. The face remotely reminds me of a bearded greatest of all time, Patrick Stewart. The face has a decent amount of shading, which really accents the values of the face. It would also appear that the eyes are screened on nicely in that they are square where they should be. The helmeted version is equally as highly detailed as the face of bearded Patrick Stewart. I find the lenses with the base coat of silver and translucent blue coat to be sublime. The weathering on the helmet also gives a sense that this helmet has seen quite a number of days in battle. The shoulder pads are anchored by a piece of plastic that sits atop the shoulders, which is a different construction than what we have seen on the Marines. I'm not too much of a fan of it because I think the V4 pauldrons are the best that have been produced to date because they allow maximum movement without any sort of sag. I really enjoy the effort that JoyToy has put with the breastplate because you can see extensive weathering that is achieved by dry brushing in this area. Then with the arms as well as the torso area, you can see the folds of the fabric in the torso area that clearly adds a layer of realism on the figure. Then the pilot appears to be carrying an attaché case that has excellent highlighting, especially around the double Aquila area. Now, as I stated before in other reviews, I am not a fan of any sort of weapons or accessories being attached to the body of the action figure as I'm demonstrating right now, because I don't like accessories literally tying down the figure. And moving on to the waist, there's really nothing much to see here, except I believe that this pilot has a holstered las pistol right here. Then moving on to the legs, they also have this wrinkly fabric on them. But interestingly enough, I think that the star of the show are the boots because they are insanely real looking with these highlighted straps that run the circumference of the lower legs. And here is the detail of this action figure in the back a little bit more. Finally, I do find all these wires and cables to be a bit bothersome, even though I am sure that they connect to the knight so that the pilot can operate it effectively. And so now let's talk about the movement of this action figure. Again, I have to apologize to you in that it is actually easier to operate this action figure in pieces rather than actually assembling it together. But trust me, we will get to the assembly. As you saw, the cockpit opens up via these very car hood / bonnet like pistons. And now let's put the pilot into the knight. You obviously need to do a little bit fiddling around to get him situated correctly, but given some time, you can see that the pilot fits perfectly in the cockpit. You then can move the pauldrons up and down like this, but they have no lateral movement whatsoever. Both of these shoulder joints can be spun 360 degrees as I am demonstrating to you right now, and there's a sense of resistance when you rotate this area. You need to put a little bit of force into the rotation, which is good because loose joints are terrible on an action figure. You can achieve some sort of lateral motion with the shoulder joints, but you really need to put some elbow grease into it. Again, no complaints from me because I'd rather these joints be tighter. The heraldic shield pivots from side to side, as well as up and down, and the same goes for the heavy stubber, side to side, as well as up and down. There's a bar that is in the middle of the head that then attaches to this clip area right here. The head has decent range of motion, but is restricted by this cowl right here. Now I will show you exactly how to light up this knight's head. You first remove this face covering right here, and then you remove the lenses. This then reveals the area where you can put the button battery in it. The button battery has now been put in. Now let's demonstrate how this works. You basically take a magnet, put it over it, and voila, it lights up, and I believe it lights up for 30 seconds. And if you want to turn it off, you just wave the wand again, and it goes off just like so. And now let's light up the knight with this face mask on, and this looks properly menacing as the eyes are gazing at you menacingly from the dark depths. And you can move this weapon up and down via this piston. There's a nice rigidity when you operate it, which feels nice and heavy. And I will show you this action again once the knight is assembled. The rubber teeth are capable of being moved manually like I'm demonstrating right here, but it would have been nice to have some sort of motor built in back here so that this area could have been motorized. The battle cannon has the same functionality as the chainsword, and you can move this area up and down via these pistons right here. And I will tell you that there is glorious resistance when you do this. However, the battle cannon is completely static right here and cannot be moved. All right, this is the neutral position of the knight's legs, and I can tell you via this hip joint there is a very limited range of motion. This is the amount of motion that you can have when kicking the leg out forward. And this is the amount of motion that you have when you kick out the leg back. I think that the knees are only capable of moving 15 degrees back, like I'm showing you right now. And once again, you have to really put your back into it when you're trying to flex these joints. Then finally, with the ankle joints, you can rotate them forward like this, and then back. And this is the maximum range of motion of that forward and back. And then you also have some lateral movement side to side like this, and then back again. And like I said before, there is a lot of resistance on these joints. The toes on the knight are sadly incapable of any motion whatsoever, as it is static. For some odd reason, you can remove this panel, but I don't think it really does that much. With regard to facial hair, Professor X, he has full range of motion about the head, as well as the arms as I'm demonstrating right now, as well as the legs back and forth. And then this is the maximum extension of the knee forward, and then the knee backward. And his ankle is also able to pivot back and forth like this. However, there is restriction of motion in that you can't spin the torso 360 degrees, due to these cables that are right here that run from the shoulder down to the thigh area. However, the nice thing is that you can disconnect these cables via this ball and socket joint, and now you have full 360 degrees of motion as I'm demonstrating. And then you can reattach them, which I think is a fantastic thing. And now let's finally do the thing that you're probably screaming at me to do from probably the beginning of this video, which is to assemble this knight. So the first thing that we're gonna do is to attach the head. And I'll have to say this is kind of hard to do because I'm doing it blind. I can't see where the clip goes into the bar. However, when you finally get this part in, you get a nice satisfying click. Let's now attach this Reaper chainsword. And I'll have to say, the joints are rather snug. The next thing to do is to attach the battle cannon, and you attach it the same way that you would attach the chainsword. So now the battle cannon is attached. I will show you how this glorious piece of machinery moves. And here is a top-down view of the range of motion that you can achieve with the battle cannon. The same goes for the Reaper chainsword. There is a good amount of motion that you can achieve up and down like this. And the final thing that we're going to do is attach the legs. I mean, you really have to push this peg into the hole as I'm straining right now. And voila, the legs are finally connected to the body. All right, here is the knight fully assembled, and oh, it is glorious to look at. So this knight roughly stands at 21 inches tall and weighs approximately 11 pounds and 9 ounces. And now it is size comparison time. And the first figure that we'll put up is a Warhammer 40K miniature, and you can barely see the sanguinary guard at the base of the foot. And next we shall move to a box knot for the Blood Angels, and this box knot also barely registers as a blip. Moving on to action figures now, the pilot is absolutely still dwarfed by the knight. Next on the docket, we will have a version 3 intercessor, and that intercessor only comes up to the knight's shins. Next, we will put a V4 action figure next to the knight, and Titus is also quite the midget. Next, we have a Blood Angels Terminator, and it literally only comes up to the bottom of the knee. We have Robute Gilliman, which actually comes up to the top of the knight's knee. And moving on, we have Horus, which is the largest humanoid action figure that I own. And last but not least, we have the Blood Angels box knot. Wow. I am completely left speechless by this action figure. I think that this action figure literally transcends the very definition of its name. I believe that we can call this a grim, dark, exquisite sculpture that's set to motion. For something that is so massive in scale, I don't really have that many negative points to pick out on this action figure. I suppose if you were to force me to point out a few negatives on this action figure, I would say that the armor panels may need just a little bit more shading to give it that extra oomph on it. And I find that the pilot's various cables to be a little bit finicky and bothersome. But the positives obviously completely outweigh any of the negatives that I have said. The knight is very well made and super sturdy. It does not feel like it will break under any sort of operation whatsoever, unless if you're super violent with it. Speaking of operation, I really like it how the joints are hard to move. because the knight is able to hold a pose, and I'm sure that over time it will loosen up a little bit, so you want them to be tighter initially. The art and detail that is expressed all over the knight matches the house that the knight represents. I especially love the attention to detail in the cockpit with all of the instrument panels that are in the cockpit. And finally, the action figure of Jean-Luc Picard is probably one of the most highly detailed. Inevitably, the question will be asked, is this figure worth the $700? And unfortunately, that is something I really cannot answer. You yourself have got to reach deeply into your brain as well as into your wallets and find the answer to that question yourself. I've given you all the tools to make an informed decision with some pros as well as cons about this figure. I suppose the most simple question that I will have you answer is, do you love knights? And if the answer is anything less than love, I believe that you already found your answer. Please let me know in the comments section what you thought of this knight, what you thought of my review, and whether you plan to procure this gigantic piece of art. With that being said, members of the chapter, thank you for lasting until the end of this marathon. I'm really appreciative of all of you who watched this video to the end. Thank you all for your likes, comments, and subscribes, as they all help the channel out immensely. And with that being said, thank you once again, and I'll see you all in the next one.